And I think what we'll do is try and get through item 18 before we take a break. So we've got commission regulations and commission general regulations, and this is an adoption for possible action. Public comment allowed. Persons wishing to provide comment on regulations are requested to complete a regulation speaker card and present it to the recording secretary. Our first regulation item is number 18, Commission Regulation 1509. This is an amendment. Number 2, Big Game Seasons, Division Administrator Brian Wakeling for possible action. The Commission will consider amendment number 2 of the 2016-17 hunting seasons and dates for mule deer, pronghorn antelope, elk, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat, including limits, hunting hours, special hunt eligibility, animal sex, physical characteristics, and legal weapon requirements, hunt boundary restrictions, and emergency depredation hunt structure and statewide quotas. It's a mouthful. Mr. Wakeling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I've got a brief PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with you this morning. Essentially, the seasons that the Commission sets, typically the Commission sets those for a 2-year period of time. We have the Commission set those last year, and so at this point in time, all we are recommending are some amendments to the seasons that are already been adopted. And so what I want to do is go through a very short PowerPoint presentation, kind of outlining the changes we're proposing and the rationale for those changes. These are not in the identical order that the CRs are, and so I'll probably just go ahead and go through all of these unless the Commission chooses to stop me, and we can discuss each one independently. But there are only 4 proposed changes, and one of those proposals the Department would like to amend.
Brian, just to let you know, I think what my intent would be for you to give us the overview on all of them, and then when we start taking motions, we'll take them one at a time.
Very good. As I mentioned, there's 4 proposals. 3 of the proposed amendments deal with bighorn sheep seasons, and 1 dealing with antlerless elk. This is the second year. This is the second year of the ones that were adopted in February of 2015. One of the things I'd like to mention is that we are in the process of going through the harvest guidelines process. What our intent with this harvest guidelines process is to inform the season setting process for next year. So when we come back to the Commission next year for a 2-year season set, we're going to use the process that we're going through right now, the feedback that we're getting from the public, to provide the revisions to that at that point in time. Currently, we're trying to hold just about everything as steady as we can, not making any dramatic changes to the seasons because they were adopted for a 2-year period of time. So the first proposed change, and this is the one that we're actually, we had proposed this change. We wanted to add a season in Unit 195 for a resident Nelson Desert Bighorn sheep. This has been predicated on an agreement that dealt with the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. We have been working diligently with the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. They have been working in good faith with us. We've been working with some of the wildlife conservation organizations that have been part of this. But I have to say, at this point in time, we do not have a signed agreement in place. And so this was the proposed language that we were going to have in the footnote associated with that. Because we cannot adequately inform a hunter of this, of what the regulations would be if they were to apply and get drawn, the Department really can't go forward with this recommended change at this point in time. So despite the fact with all the information within the packets that were distributed, the original recommendation, at this point the Department does not feel confident moving forward. Just some of the rationale for why we considered it in the first place. It's a reestablished population, you know, and the population is doing well. We're approaching 100 animals, so the population is doing quite well. The next change that's recommended, and this one we are still recommending, this is a Rocky Mountain any ram, any legal weapon hunt, 9151. This is an interstate hunt, and so what this change is, this is a reciprocal hunt with Utah. In this year, we would not be, this is the reciprocal year in which Utah has access to this hunt. The season would not be open to a Nevada resident, only the Utah tag holder, and Utah tag holder, if is drawn, may hunt within Unit 091, but they must abide by the Nevada regulations. 2016, this is the year that the Utah resident has the opportunity, and to allow for that Utah hunter to hunt in Nevada, they must have an open season defined. We're also recommending some amendments to the U tags. They're the U seasons, rather. This is the second year that we've offered this. We were the U hunts, and actually the third year we were contacted by the public. Public had, and there was specifically some non-residents saying, "Hey, you know, we'd like to be able to hunt a U in Nevada if the opportunity presented itself." This is consistent with Policy 24, going ahead and providing some non-resident opportunity. Policy 24 suggests that number to be around about 10%. Our initial thoughts were that we would probably, when we get around to the quota setting, it would probably be less than the 10%, but probably, you know, we're not sure how much demand there would be, and we don't have the ability to offer a reduced fee or anything. This would be a full fee for any non-resident that chose to apply. Because this would not change our tag quota, we don't expect it to have any biological effect, and so for that reason, the department's recommending that. Finally, we're recommending the closure of one of the antlerless depredation seasons, that one being 113B. And this one's been a real challenge to manage. There's an inconsistent elk distribution. The September hunt has had low hunter success. The hunt's been considered largely ineffective at achieving our objectives. We have the ability to direct the antlerless muzzleloader hunts, which it occurs at the same time and has been in conflict with that same depredation hunt. We've got the ability to direct those hunters towards the private land. And even if this fails, we've got the antlerless elk private land management hunts that was established 2 years ago that we could also put to use here. That concludes my presentation. I would be willing to entertain any questions the commission may have.
Questions or comments for Mr. Wakeling from the commission? Commissioner Valentine?
Mr. Wakeling, just for my information, what exactly would a non-resident U tag go for? What would they pay?
$1,200.
Additional questions? Commissioner Johnston?
Just a quick question on the hunt and private land at the Tahoe Regional Industrial Center. Are we expecting that agreement's going to be done for a future season, or is it just hung up and just can't get it finalized?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Johnston, my understanding is that this has not been a season that we've had in place in that area for very long. What has occurred and what the field biologist recommended was that we close this season because it hasn't been effective. There are several other seasons in place that are designed to address the same issue. This is primarily a depredation problem, and so we do have other seasons in place that can address the issue. This just has not been a time. The September timeframe has not been a time when those elk have demonstrated susceptibility.
I was focused on what was going to be the any ram, any legal weapon hunt in 195 with Tahoe Regional Industrial Center. I just wanted to kind of understand the status of that agreement.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Johnson, I believe Deputy Director Robb has.
We have been working with Bumhess from Virginia City. He was on the county commission up there for years, does a lot of work with the Tahoe Industrial Center. Larry Johnson, Carl Lackey, Larry Johnson from NBU, Carl Lackey from our office, one of our biologists, have been working very hard on getting an agreement put together. We had an agreement that we thought would cover what they're after. We signed that in December, sent it to them. It was after a meeting that Carl and Larry had with the operators out there. We drafted it, sent it to them. Just this week, we received back notice that they wanted some additional language put in. Some of that language is a little bit problematic, and we're concerned with it, and we just need more time to work that out. In discussions yesterday, we don't have stopgaps in place for Silver State tag or heritage tag, and we have limited resource out there, and in the agreement there's limited people that could be on site, and without the stopgaps of the Silver State tag and the heritage tag being in place, we would be setting ourselves up for future issues without addressing some of those first. So it is something that is in process. They are working with us in good faith. It's not that they're holding us up or we're holding it up. It's just trying to get on the same page and come up with something that protects them and gives an opportunity to our sportsmen.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Bliss?
Yeah, Deputy Director Robb, is there any parts, I'm not real familiar with I know where it's at, but I'm not real familiar with the unit. Is there any parts of the unit where there's sheep that doesn't encounter the private property? Is there a mountain range where there are sheep that you could just exclude where the private property is and allow a hunt in an area that there isn't private property? And I understand it's too late to draft all those guidelines, but maybe in the future if there was anything.
One of the issues with Story County, it is the county in the state of Nevada that has the most private land in it. I think it's 95% private land. A good number of the sheep that we transplanted into that unit, we have radio tracking collars on, and we've been able to monitor their seasonal usage over the past 3-4 years, and they are definitely on Tahoe Reno Industrial Center property. Every once in a while they venture over to Waste Management property, and every once in a while they're on Eagle Pitcher Mine property. But to my knowledge, they do not really go towards any of the 5% of public property, and I don't think that's really in sheep habitat where that public land even exists.
Additional questions? Just a couple items. I did get looped in with some correspondence from both White Pine and Lincoln County that was discussing some proposed season changes, and I informed them that we're looking at amendments. But I did encourage them to engage with both the state office in terms of the hunt guidelines, because I think some of the recommendations would fall into there, as well as their local biologists, and that now was the time to start thinking about any changes they wanted going forward to 2017. I know some of those CAB members are here today, so just wanted to put that on the record. That was my encouragement, is to work with the department, both at the local and state level, to start looking at those changes so we're ready to go in 2017. A couple other things, and this is probably a question to you, Brian. In terms of the non-resident, the U-hunts, we're looking at opening a U-hunt in each of the units. So we're comfortable putting at least one non-resident tag in each of those units?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that is correct.
Okay, and I'm obviously familiar with policy 24, and we do have some, I think one of the cabs brought up that horn shorter than the air pronghorn, we don't necessarily have seasons for, or the 10% on, and seasons for. And I think what we've done on these sorts of hunts is really tried to gauge that interest, and I don't know that we can gauge that without having a hunt. So as long as you're okay with putting at least one tag in each of those units, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I don't know what kind of non-resident pool we're going to have, and we very well could have a second draw for one of these tags potentially. So I guess just so everyone's aware of that, and what could be coming. In terms of the 195 hunt, I think I've provided direction to staff and some of my conversations with Deputy Director Rob that from my standpoint, if this commission can't put in paper what those restrictions are going to be on the hunter when he goes in the field on the private property, that it wouldn't necessarily be a good idea to advertise a hunt without having those in black and white. And I truly appreciate the efforts of the department and also the private landowner, and I'd like you to relay that to them. And if there's any questions they have of me or this commission's reluctance to open that season before everything's in place and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, I would offer to make that communication. But at this point, I think the department's making the right move with pulling that recommendation, and I hope by this time next year we'll have something put together. And I think there's a few things we can do later in the agenda to make sure we're well on our way to meeting some of those mutual covenants. So appreciate all the work on it. With that, I think what we'll do is open up County Advisory Board comment on item 18, Commission Regulation 1509. This is CR 1509, as mentioned, Amendment Number 2, 2016 Big Game Seasons. So County Advisory Boards, if you have comments on the amendment, please come on up.
Which mic we using, Jeremy? Does it matter? Which mic?
We've got two, so if you guys want to come up and get on deck on the other one, feel free.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Chairman of Clark County. I guess I understood that if you had a regulation open, even though you made one little amendment in it, we kind of looked at the overall regulation and thought that there could be changes made to the grader. And you said in your clarification that just the amendment would be the only thing we would be considering. So having said that, some of the Clark comments will go to the future, as you said, to Brian Wakeling and others. And we did support at least without any concept change, just for the record. Technically, we supported all of the amendments as written because we didn't have any comments on any of the amendments as written. We had comments on the other parts of the thing. I figured once you had the reg open, making other changes was a possibility. So I would say that for the clarification for the commissioners up there, and Commissioner Valentine was in the audience, is that we did support all of the amendments as written. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Additional County Advisory Board input? Public comment in Las Vegas? All right, public comment in Reno on item 18.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Bobby McCollum. I have a question about there's a comment on the bottom of page 1 of Amendment 2. It's where the double asterisk is. It says low elk numbers in the area. This hunt is an attempt to drastically reduce elk numbers from these units, and it relates to, I believe, 3 or 4 areas. What is the population of elk in those areas? It just seems an odd comment to make that low elk numbers in the area, and the hunt is an attempt to drastically reduce elk numbers. Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring that back to the department after we take our public comment in Reno. Is there additional public comment in Reno?
No more comment in Reno, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wakeling, would you like to address the question in terms of the footnote? I think we're looking at depredation hunts, but I'll let you explain the reason for that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I didn't quite catch the question. Could you?
Yeah, so the question was in regards to Hunt 4107. There's the double asterisk on several of these hunts that states low elk numbers in the area, and that this hunt is an attempt to drastically reduce elk numbers from these units, and poor hunter success is expected. The question was, do we have an idea of what the populations are and why the need for that double asterisk footnote be at the bottom of page 1?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Oftentimes when, in virtually every one of the instances where we're managing our elk populations, what we're trying to achieve is a management objective that's either stated specifically within one of our elk sub-plan for those areas, or in a situation, if we don't have an elk sub-plan developed for the area, the overall plan, statewide plan, would be to keep those populations at the lowest number possible. When we have elk populations at very low numbers, and we're trying to achieve that objective, that management objective is to keep it at the lowest number possible. Our objective in some of those situations may be to completely eliminate the elk in that area because of the relationships we have developed with the land management agencies, the livestock producers, through that elk management plan. When you have elk numbers at very low levels, it's virtually impossible to estimate the actual numbers that are in the area. It's also can be very difficult even to model populations in some situations because you have the animals are oftentimes transient, they're not occupying the area a lot. And so if the management objective is to reduce that population, and in many cases that's what we're dealing with, what we're trying to do is inform hunters before they apply what kind of an experience they might expect.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question or discussion from the commission? Commissioner Morai?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you alluded to the fact that there's the private land issues there and that the landowner would be eligible for the antlerless tag program also.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Morai, that is absolutely accurate, and one of the points I tried to make clear, but I appreciate you bringing that.
Additional questions or discussion? Commissioner Valentine?
Thank you, Chairman Drew. I just wanted to bring up and put it on public record that out of the county, the Clark County CAB, there was a discussion, and some good points were brought up. If we can't make the dramatic changes that we thought we could make or suggest, one of the changes that I think I got to get off my chest is the antlerless elk hunts. I feel are going to have to be pushed back a little bit. I think pushing them into the middle of January is not a good way to go. So when we look at that, I think I'll be looking to pull that back. Also, there was a suggestion on the sheep hunts that we push the rifle hunt in all the areas that we can to the end of December and allow more people in the fields over those holiday breaks. So just putting that on the record.
Yeah, and I think we all received that correspondence, and Brian, you probably did too, and I think that's probably something that would be pertinent to the hunt guidelines, if I'm not mistaken. But
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Valentine, that is exactly the way that I would like to treat that kind of input. It was not something that was considered by the biologists in the formulation of this hunt recommendation. Oftentimes with a season extension, there may be some unintended consequence and overlap with a deer hunt or something of that nature. But if we certainly would want to capture that comment, consider it through the harvest guidelines process. That way, when we come forward next year, we can provide not only consider, we can provide a rationale for our response.
additional questions or discussion? Commissioner Bliss?
Thank you, Chairman Drew. I have to agree with Commissioner Valentine. I think there's some really good, valid comments and suggestions on some of the season dates that come out of Clark County on the sheep seasons. Of course, most of you are aware, have my feelings on those January elk hunts going into there. I guess in the future, when we make these adjustments, if we have this open, I would like it to where we could make additional amendments to these, because it's something that some of these suggestions from the county and stuff are very legitimate, and it frustrates me that we cannot do that. There may be times in the future where in certain areas there's additional sheep tags or elk tags or deer tags that maybe making a change in the season during this time period would help with hunter congestion. And the way this is presented ties our hands in the ability to do any of those adjustments. And so I kind of share the same frustrations as Commissioner Valentine in some of this.
And I hear that, and I understand those concerns, and I think, Brian, you and I maybe can work together to figure out on off years how we can make some of those adjustments if they come up. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit of a disservice to the department not to have those changes discussed through the local area biologist. So I have no problem working on adjusting that and making this more streamlined in the future and setting the expectation for the county advisory boards as well. So, point taken. Questions or discussion? All right, Commissioner Hubbs.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. I know you were speaking to the double asterisk comment to the woman who spoke up in Reno, and I just wanted to understand a little bit better. So in those areas, you're just alerting the public that there's a low probability of encountering an elk, and it's actually the department's position that they want to lower the numbers there? Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hubbs, yes. In most instances, when we place an antlerless harvest in place, our objective is either to maintain the population at the level that it's at or reduce that population. There are portions of the state where the elk population exceeds the population objectives that are established within the elk management plans. The department has been very innovative in trying to come up with ways to keep those populations from exceeding those population objectives. And so that plays a role into some of the season lengths, the season frequency, the hunter crowding that a lot of the hunters are perceiving as not being particularly favorable for them. But our objective in many situations is to reduce elk populations. We're not trying to grow them in many places within the state. So we're looking at the elk plans. The elk plans are developed by the local communities, the local sub-planning committees, and adopted. Currently, we've got the Humboldt Elk sub-planning process ongoing, and you heard a little bit of the update there yesterday. That plan will be coming forth possibly in March, and that will establish population objectives, and those population objectives may be a number. It could be a forage allocation. It could be a forage use. That committee is leaning towards a population objective, a number, and so what the commission and the department agrees to under those situations is that we're going to do everything within our power to manage that elk population at that level. In some of those instances, we wind up with extremely low numbers of elk in certain areas, and when you're dealing with those low numbers of elk, if we could remove the last elk in there, we would, because that's part of the agreement that we have. However, it's very difficult to say you're going to get the last one, and so when a hunter's applying for that type of a hunt, we're trying to disclose the type of hunt that they're applying for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I understand now. I think it is, when I read it again, I had to do a double take too. So I was in agreement with her at first. It sounds odd the way that it reads, that they're low and yet we want to reduce more. It seems counterintuitive. But if we know we don't really want them there in the first place, I can understand the disclosure. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to point out, this is a depredation hunt. So typically when we have a depredation hunt, it's a very specialized or localized hunt to address either a problem, a conflict, or as Brian said, and I think in this particular case, a commitment through the elk planning process to that particular unit.
I think that's a good point, Jeremy. I heard you mention that before, but I think it could be just, for those who aren't familiar with the hunts and the titling, it's helpful to go over it sometimes.
Additional questions or discussion? Commissioner Bliss?
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful in the description if it said low elk numbers in the area. This hunt is an attempt to drastically reduce elk numbers from these units per the Central Nevada Elk Plan that says in this particular area to be managed for 0 elk or something, and then that would clarify why you're doing it maybe.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bliss, you know, we can certainly wordsmith the language within there. You know, essentially in many instances, you know, we may use a footnote to reference multiple hunts in some situations, and without looking at all of the hunts that this references. In some cases, we may not actually be looking to manage towards zero. And essentially, I think, not to be argumentative, but I think that the way it's the short message, it kind of delivers our intent fairly well. But you know, as Commissioner Hubbs pointed out, a lot of times we take a lot of things for granted. You know, that we're talking to the people that understand the situation, and oftentimes we'll get a new hunter that's looking at it, or somebody who may be a non-hunter and may not understand what our objectives are.
Additional questions or discussion? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion on that portion of CR 1509, Amendment Number 2, dealing with the any legal weapon depredation hunt 4107. Commissioner
Commissioner Drew, I would like to motion to pass the amendment as proposed.
And is the motion specific to that portion related to Hunt 4107 or the entire packet? My preference would be 4107, but it's your motion.
Okay, let me revise that to my motion a bit to 4107.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Hubbs and a second by Commissioner McNinch to approve that portion of CR 1509, Amendment Number 2, pertinent to Hunt Number 4107 per the department's recommendation, which would essentially be closing the hunt in 113. Are there questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 9-0.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification, that hunt carries footnote B with it. That's the only hunt on that group that carries footnote B. It would be our intent probably to eliminate that footnote and renumber the other footnotes accordingly.
Understood, so long as there's not something, yeah, those are all the hunts. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think we need an official motion for that. I think it's understood. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. The next hunt is any legal weapon hunt 3151. This was adding the desert sheep hunt to 195 as discussed. And so unless someone has a different idea, I don't think we need a motion on this as the department has pulled back that recommendation. So without a motion, there will be no change. Last call, no motions. Okay. All right, our next hunt is on page 4, non-resident Nelson Desert Bighorn Sheep, NEU, any legal weapon hunt 3281. This is the implementation of a new non-resident desert sheep hunt. Are there any discussions on this one, or is someone willing to make a motion specific to hunt 3281?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve non-resident Nelson Desert Bighorn Sheep, NEU, any legal weapon hunt 3281 as presented by the department.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second by Commissioner Wallace and McNinch to approve Hunt 3281 as amendment number 2 to CR 1509 as presented by the department, which would open 4 new units to non-resident NEU hunts. Are there questions or discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 9-0. And the last item is Hunt 9151, which is essentially clarifying that Hunt Unit 091 is interstate herd or hunt, and that the season is not open to Nevada residents in this upcoming year or season. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the resident Rocky Mountain Bighorn Sheep, any ram, any legal weapon hunt 9151 as presented in Amendment 2 to CR 15-09.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Johnston, seconded by Commissioner Bliss, to approve that portion of CR 1509 Amendment Number 2 relevant to Hunt 9151, which is simply stating that the hunt in 091 is a Utah season and not open to Nevada residents. Is there any question or discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Wakeling, unless there's something I missed, I think that concludes item 18.
You are correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.